I've been reporting on how the media covers Bernie Sanders as a presidential candidate since his first run began back in 2015. That's when Donald Trump rallies were getting wall-to-wall coverage.
In the middle of this media frenzy awaiting
Donald Trump talking about Obama right now.
And let's listen.
Go ahead.
Trump got 20 times more coverage than Sanders on TV networks during the primaries. And Hillary Clinton got about twice as much airtime, a disparity noted by the New York Times public editor.
Are you saying that somebody's got their thumb on the scale at the New York Times for Hillary?
Yeah.
Bernie won 13 million votes in 22 states, but to see his rallies live, you often had to dial up C-SPAN. This lack of coverage helped stall Sanders in 2016, but this time around, could the blackout actually help? He's running up against this huge problem, though, that I mentioned earlier of this media blackout. He often either gets ignored or kind of laughed at as not a serious candidate. One thing standing between Sanders and serious coverage in 2020 is the media's belief that he simply can't win.
It's just you can't win as a socialist.
Disaster.
The moderates will win.
I think the risk,
Heavy centrist
the
Democrat.
guy's a recipe for electoral disaster.
And if Sanders can't win, the thinking goes, then it's justified to largely ignore him. A recent study reveals that's exactly what MSNBC has done.
Bernie Sanders makes my skin crawl.
Bernie gets less airtime and more negative mentions than his top rivals. If the media took its coverage cues from polling, Sanders would be treated like a top-tier candidate.
In the 25 of the last 25 polls, Bernie Sanders is beating Donald Trump head-to-head in every poll out there.
You wouldn't know that from reading this New York Times headline. Sanders, who actually beats Trump in 3 swing states, is not mentioned.
And all we're arguing for is, can we have a fair shake?
What is the heart of the critique about what Sanders calls the corporate media?
In about, a minute or so, you're going to cut to commercial breaks and you're going to see some pharmaceutical ads, incentivizing you and others to make sure that you're asking the questions and driving the conversations in certain areas and not in certain areas.
So let's take a break because I do it to fit in a commercial.
Sure enough, the segment was followed by pharmaceutical ads.
Healthier brain, better life. I was cured.
For Bernie's campaign, this blackout amounts to a huge grievance. But the way Sanders is ignored could also be an advantage. A pattern has emerged in presidential primaries. Candidates rise, face media scrutiny, and then they drop in the polls. Remember back to the 2012 Republican primary. You saw it happen to Rick Perry, Herman Cain, and on and on. This time, it's already happened to Elizabeth Warren, and Pete Buttigieg could be next. But what if the media pretend you're not rising at all? Like when CNN puts Buttigieg and Joe Biden within striking distance of Elizabeth Warren, while ignoring Bernie, the kind of thing that happens all the time. Or when CNN puts Warren ahead in New Hampshire when she's not.
Leading the pack in both polls is Elizabeth Warren.
Or while MSNBC docks Sanders 5 points in a poll when he's actually gained 5.
Bernie Sanders, who dropped at least 5 points.
Now, when you press reporters on why they don't cover Sanders despite his poll numbers, they'll often say, well, he won't actually stand up under scrutiny. But if Sanders continues to rise in Iowa while the press ignores him, there's a chance he could skip the scrutiny phase and climb right into first without being attacked as a frontrunner. Let's face it, the corporate media was never going to anoint Bernie Sanders the nominee. Maybe the best he can hope for is that they just stay out of his way.